Welcome to our meeting. This is our weekly Commissioners Finance meeting. Today is August 23rd, 2023. The appointed hour, 1:30 p.m. has arrived. We'll call the meeting to order, and we open with the opportunity for public comment for any issues anyone wants to bring before the Board of Commissioners who isn't already on the agenda. So. No, all right, thank you. Okay, that moves us to item 3 with the minutes in hand of August 16th. Perhaps on that.
Move to approve the minutes of August 16th.
I second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. All right, that brings us to our topics of discussion for today. We have several, and we'll just work our way down through the list here. Robert is here to present a request to us.
We are seeking approval for our Infor contract to purchase additional licenses that are required to do the server 2019 server upgrade. The amount is for $38,561.40.
Questions on that?
How long are these? Is this a yearly thing?
No, this is a one-time for these new licenses.
Okay, thank you.
It'll last forever, right?
Until we upgrade, yep.
Okay, so we are looking for action on this today.
I will move to approve the Infor LLC contract addendum for the ERP department.
We'll second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our other esteemed guest today.
How are you?
Serta, going to talk to us about the Transportation Center project.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, the bottom sheet, the charts is something we'll talk about last. That's just information. So the top sheet is the project at Brittner Road, right? So we are advancing that. We hope to have ribbon cutting in December of 2024. So we have, now these are prefab pool facilities that they'll come in, erect, and then complete on the inside. And so they're currently constructing those. Once they are about 60% designed, then we'll begin seeing some earth move to get ready for installation. So, but once they go up, the project will go quickly because they come prefab. So I think it's kind of interesting. I thought you'd be interested to see the initial proposal budget compared to the current budget. So this is pre-COVID, pre-inflation, pre-staffing shortages, right? All that fun stuff. So I'm not proud that the total budget went from 3 to 10 million. But the good news is the local share is 30 and it didn't go up. So PennDOT said, because I said to them, we got 30, I'm not going back to the well. They said, okay. So good, right? That's great news for you.
Yeah.
So the first picture here, you've seen this. That's just the bus storage facility, the bus wash, the admin. Just I put it in there just again to make sure everybody's on the same page of what that looks like. The next picture down is it's if you use the two last pictures, it'll help you understand what I'm trying to illustrate here. But the borough said that that's great in our land development plan, but you're going to need to put sidewalks and treescape along the street. That's a requirement. So. And it's in the comp plan, so I think it works. And for transit, how can we say no to sidewalks? Because every bus ride starts with walking, and sidewalks are good for transit. So PennDOT agreed to pick up the cost as part of that. That's probably part of that 10 million increase, right? Or the 7 million increase. So just let you know that part of that is, and that's because remember, we have a lease for the building, and at whatever period of time, 30, 40 years, it's technically the county's. The sidewalk will be constructed and it will be yours immediately because we don't have a lease for that, but I don't want your sidewalk. So we'll just construct that, and we've been in conversations with facilities so they know this is coming. So, so that's the story of the building. So it's moving along, and we'll have a ribbon cutting in hopefully a little over a year and a half, and we'll be ready to roll. Not intended to talk about this, but we're having conversations with Wolf, who does the Shippensburg service, and they're really not interested in doing it anymore. And so we're looking at bringing that in-house. And so we could be looking at having those vehicles maintained at this facility. So that'll be something new. We have not talked to staff about that. So but we're in that planning stages to see what we're going they do.
Is there a reason for?
I think it's just, staffing, I think is the biggest issue for them, and being so far away that they have to supervise it. And so, I've been wanting to bring it in anyways, because I think we can do it at less cost directly. So I think that makes sense. So I don't know if there's any questions on that. That's really all I needed to say to bring you up to speed on that. The sidewalk was a big piece. I just want to let you know, part of that process is sidewalks. We didn't talk about that.
All right. The next item.
Okay, so we knew this when we created SRTA, but I figured it was such a big lift, and we still had several years that we would put it on the back plate. So much on the back plate that I discovered that, we really need to do this quickly. And so the CAT charter, the Cumberland-Dauphin-Harrisburg Transit Authority charter, has expired, and we need to renew that because the collective bargaining people are employees of that unit and probably always will be. So it's really just to do that, but there is an additional action in the resolution, and that is to change the number of Dauphin County votes. So historically, Dauphin County had 3, Cumberland 2, the city 2. With SRTA, everyone has 2. And so you have this lone board member that they have to appoint who has no real purpose because all the power lies with SRTA. The only thing that CDH does is adopt collective bargaining agreements, which happens once every 3 years. And so they would have to appoint a board member who would never attend a meeting, who would have no understanding of what we're doing. And so I asked them, would you consider moving from 3 votes to 2 on that? And they approved that this morning at 10 o'clock. So, because it makes sense. They appointed a board member who I gave them an orientation, and then I didn't see them again for a year because there's no purpose. So just so you know, that changes their voting structure from 3 to 2. Right. And they again adopted this morning. The last thing I always have to come with handouts. You probably wouldn't know that about me. And so I always like to bring something new that just so you have an understanding of what we do and how we do business and look at things. And so what I have next is the dashboard, and this is what we give to the board of directors every month. These are the things that we think are most important. Ridership, obviously, preventive maintenance, because if you don't have safety, you don't have anything, right? Safety, service, stewardship is our value. So we look at that, and we believe on-time performance for preventive maintenance directly correlates to safe vehicles on the road. And so it's like bicycles are on here. If you look at the bottom right-hand side of the chart, you'll see bicycle usage. And so like from July, and this is the first month of the fiscal year, right? So the numbers are only showing July to July, but you can see how it's increased almost by 500 usage in the month of July. So bicycles continue to grow a bigger part of our program. I'm going to have you flip the page because this is like the meat of what we do, right? So if you look on the left-hand side, you can see the Cumberland County paratransit. The ridership last year was 72. For the month of July, it went up to 8,100 trips. So ridership continues to grow. We are teetering at being almost fully recovered in paratransit since the pandemic. We're really doing pretty well. Interestingly, the only sort of dark spot on this chart is Dauphin County of all places, because we are so short on drivers in Dauphin County that we can't meet the demand, and we're actually have our foot on that brake. I think we could have full recovery there too, but we're struggling hiring operators in Dauphin County. And then if you go to the next box, the fixed route, the first box is CDH. That is the Cumberland-Dauphin-Harrisburg ridership for fixed route. And last year was 79, and for July, this last July was 92. So ridership continues to grow. We're system-wide recover probably in the high 70s now on fixed route. But again, it's encouraging to see that it's a continued steady growth month after month after month. So we're moving in that direction. And then the last page is just our employees and the challenges we have. And if you scroll down, you'll see a big number. This is 20. That's the paratransit in Dauphin County that we're really struggling with. But just a little insight of who we are and how I communicate some of the important stuff to the board, because that's important stuff. And that's on our website too. So every month when we add our board packet, it's part of the financials. So they're always out there for the public to see.
So the action item is the extension.
Please.
We had a lot of discussion. I remember when this issue first came around, it's still regarding Kirk. I may lean on you for this, whether 50 years was the correct time frame for us to make a commitment to. Did seem to kind of tie our hands on some of the changes that we needed to make that you've been successful in.
Well, but all the changes we need to make now is SRTA. They have no authority besides passing which they adopt this collective bargaining. SRTA still has to ratify. Because the federal recipient of funds is SRTA. CDH they have no money. So kind of hard to do much or anything without any money, right? And as we move forward, the boards will be exactly the same. So we need to do the same thing. We're going to talk a little more about. There are probably a few more things I need from you folks when we get there, but that's premature. There are still some other alignments that we need to make. Actual people. We have the right number of positions now. So we have like Al Beanstalk, who's on CDH, great guy. Shows up once a year, reorganized. Probably makes more sense to have somebody else in that position.
Right. His wife's.
He still shows up every month and looks at our financials. He's great. I don't. There's no. It's just functionality.
Sure.
It's different than it was now. CPTA. Kurt's already on there, but we have like Perry County, and we have some stuff. We have some work to do on CPTA yet to make everything I think work moving forward. So we'll be back once we figure that out. But yeah, I think 50 years it just makes sense. Honestly, as long as it's 12 years, we have 12 more years. But I think it was good.
Not that you're counting.
No, not counting. We're going to pay jobs every morning.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 2023-21, which is to adopt an amendment to the Articles of Incorporation for the Cumberland-Dauphin-Harrisburg Transit Authority to extend its terms of existence for a period not to exceed 50 years from the date of the approval of the Articles of Amendment, and to take any and all other actions related thereto.
I second.
Okay, it's moved in second. There's no further questions. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Right. Thank you.
Yes.
Rich, we also need to approve the Articles of Amendment extension, correct?
I think the resolution, the last part, giving us authority to do any and all action, but I don't know, we didn't do that at 10 o'clock.
Yeah. Oh, okay, okay,
I think we're okay.
okay,
I think the only thing that our solicitor said is the resolution.
got it, okay.
Attorney said.
Yeah, I think he's had seen this and we said about approving the
And he's
resolution.
on the agenda items.
I don't,
Okay, we'll clarify that with, Jill and Keith can talk, and
We'll let
if
them on.
we need to approve that, we can bring that forward at our next meeting,
Right.
if that's okay.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Always.
Okay. Items into recycling and facilities. Right, so
Yeah.
the recycling facility barn structure analysis.
Well, Kirk's bringing that up. We have 3 of our authority members at the meeting here today. Each known, I'm sure you do. We got our chairman, Dave Blank, is also a supervisor in Silver Spring Township. He's the chairman of our yard waste recycling equipment steering committee, and he runs the equipment as an employee of Fairview Township. Our vice chair, Barb Arnold. Barb is the recycling coordinator. That's part of your title, what, environmental coordinator for Lower Allen Township. And Rick Estranio, he's a commissioner in Upper Allen Township and also an engineer by trade. So glad they could attend.
I mean, Jeff, we're ready to go.
All right, so we want to give you an update on the recycling center and where we've been, where we would like to head. Get your feedback. I'm going to go to the first slide. So we're going to start out with key takeaways right away. We've been doing this now for 6 years. It's hard to believe. Business is good. We believe there's new opportunities as well that we could do if we had improved facilities. Number two, part of our challenge is the barn. The condition of it really limits what we can do operationally there. As I said, we feel new facilities would be a dramatic improvement and potentially allow us to do other things. I also wanted to point out, I think it's often overlooked. A lot of times recycling, some people perceive it as a feel-good thing. But there is a statutory requirement of all counties in Pennsylvania to ensure adequate disposal capacity for the waste that's generated within their boundaries. And recycling is really a waste management tool to help address that. So I do believe these programs bring value to not only this board, but future boards that could be facing a decision of how do we provide capacity. Just a little history. The blue bar is electronics recycling pounds. The yellow bar is household hazardous waste. So we started in 2017. That's 6 months in the first year. We added HHW, household hazardous waste, in 2019. You can see the numbers have stayed fairly consistent. 2023 is obviously partial numbers. I did want to point out we did the tire collection this year, which was very successful, about 30,000 pounds. We covered our costs with fees. Once again, these programs are supported by fees. And we survey the customers, and they, for the most part, are content with that, it appears. So as we're running these programs and we talk to the authority and we look to the future, where do we go? We know our material inflow has been steady. People are willing to pay fees that sustain the programs. We do believe there's other opportunities that we're missing, such as paper. We have a grant for a paper shredding system. We think we could continue to do tires. Appliances, we get a lot of calls about appliances with Freon. Some municipalities can put those out at the curb, some you can't. We think we could address that. Styrofoam is a question we get a lot. And then glass, it's interesting, glass. So recyclables in Cumberland County either go to Penn Waste facility in York or Apple Valley in Hagerstown. Penn Waste can handle glass, Apple Valley cannot. So most of the materials from the western part of the county go to Apple Valley. They've dropped glass from their curbside programs. We get a lot of people clamoring, could we have a drop off for glass? Which from a quality perspective, drop offs are better. You can control your quality better. And then the last question, adequate facilities. We believe the answer is no for that. And we'll get to that here in a second. So a couple months ago, you approved HRG doing a study of the barn. The results of that were not flattering. Identified structural deficiency with the barn. Threw up two pictures here. The back support wall is falling apart. Rocks are falling on the ground. Beams are sagging, cracked, and not in great condition. They identified, I think you got a copy of the report, right? They identified a lot of issues. And they told us, we asked them, hey, what, from a safety perspective, what should we be looking at? And they thought, their recommendation was we should try to be out of there in 4 years or do something to the facility with annual inspections to confirm that it's safe to be in there. So the report confirmed that the structure is deteriorating. They gave a cost estimate of $1.8 million. That was just to make the barn structurally sound. Basically return it to a barn. There'd be no climate controls, things like that. And I mentioned the last two there. Kind of jumping back now, as we had found an opportunity, a cost-effective opportunity to do some studies down there with York College Engineering Department. We jumped on that. Students did a study of the existing facility. They came up with some sketch level drawings for us, which included on-site improvements of the barn or a clean slate, remove the barn and do something in place. We got some schematics that they came up with here. They actually presented us with 3 scenarios. On the left, there is a remove the barn, full rebuild. Upper right, rehab of the barn, which is kind of what HRG studied in more detail. And the bottom right is a combination of the 2. We had to pick one that we liked. I obviously picked the one I thought looked the nicest, the one on the left. They came up with a cost estimate of about $2 million to do a project like that. This is really high level numbers though. It did include 6,000 square feet for facilities to replace the upper space in the barn that they would be losing. Obviously, we need to do more detailed engineering if we wanted to go that route. But as we started to look at the site and we met with the authority and had discussions, we realized that there's some constraints down there. The 2 biggest are the floodplain, which is increasing in size as a result of the new study. And there's also an easement the county granted to the Thereto Regional Authority in 1977 for 22 acres down there that prohibits any construction or dumping or tree removal. It's basically a conservation easement to protect that area down there. Existing conditions, non-conforming buildings that violate the township setbacks from Claremont Road. Kirk, I think you had a discussion with the code enforcement officer that basically said if that facility were to burn down, we cannot rebuild it where it is right now. Is that correct? We have grade challenges there. The land slopes, that drives costs up if you're doing grading down there. And then jumped a lot. The biggest one to me was I started thinking, well, what do we do if we rebuild down there? What do we do while we're rebuilding? It's going to take a while. Do we shut our programs down? Do we move them somewhere else? With our demand down there, the public is still going to want to recycle. So I said, hey, we looked at another site years ago. Go ahead, Kirk. Before I get there, here's the issues with the existing site. Upper left, I kind of drew in the hash mark. So Thereto Regional Authority has 3 easements down there. That one is track 1, the closest to us. So you can see how close that comes to the barn area. And then I think the greenish area is the increase in the flood.
The yellow is the increase in the special flood hazard area. And then the hatched yellow is the increase in the special non-flood hazard.
So you can see how close that comes up to the existing structure as well. And Rick took a quick look at it as an engineer, and I think you would confirm there's challenges.
Do I need to come up there or? Okay. Well, yeah, that's why I'm here is to talk about the development constraints of that site. It was Monday evening it was talked about, so I pulled HRG's subdivision plan we did for Claremont. It actually is worse than I thought because the existing barn is within the dedicated right of way that the county dedicated. And then you have an additional 35-foot setback. So between that and the floodplain, you don't have much, there's not area to develop reasonably sized, not even a size structure that the York has. And we know the township engineers very difficult to work with in that, and from the subdivision plan. So I think it would be major hurdles to get an approved plan for a building there.
So in light of all this, I said, hey, many years ago we had looked at a property on Army Heritage Drive that didn't materialize, but I still had sketch plans from when we had looked at it. It's the property right beside the PennDOT maintenance facility and the fire training center is 10 acres. I went back and I just pulled, at the time, Gannett Fleming was a consulting engineer for the authority. They had put together either 6 to 8 conceptual plans for that property, which just demonstrates there's flexibility there. So we started having discussions about that property. And ultimately, I think if you go to the next slide, Kirk, some of the benefits of it. It's relatively flat. You don't have your grade issues. It's still close to the prison, not as close as the existing site. I think that's the only downside of if we would move away from the existing site, we're a little further from the prison. But we could start fresh and we could do buildings designed for recycling use. We're not trying to convert an old barn into something that it wasn't meant to be. We feel there'd be opportunities for multi-department sharing the usage of buildings if we did something down there. It's a great location from a visibility perspective. So we have a little table, I think, comparing the two sites. You see a new site would give us room to grow. Chairman Lanker brought that up at some of the meetings. He said, well, from his perspective, it didn't make sense to invest whatever, we'll say $1.5 million down at the existing site, and then you're constrained, you can't grow in the future. Whereas if you spend that money at a different site that allows for growth in the future, that's a wiser investment. We would not have to stop services. We could build a new facility while we run our services out of the existing one. The only negative of this is we're not next to the prison. We'd have to transport trustees up there. And we feel there'd be less historical and environmental impacts at the property on the Army Heritage.
Do we have the existing capability to ferry those work release folks, or
we could, and we
buy a bus, or do we?
Yeah, well, we use the recycling department has a pickup truck.
Okay.
We would use it. Like Mount Holly comes and picks them up in a pickup truck.
Okay.
We did put in a request for ARP funding for the project. We understand it's reserved. Regardless of where we go, additional engineering is going to be required. So we're here, I think, to ask if we can do an RFP for engineering design services. I put a check mark next to the new site. That's what the authority recommends. That's what we recommend. But we wanted to see what you had to say. We didn't want to completely eliminate the existing site. Don't necessarily need, I think, a decision today. If you guys want some time to think about it, we wanted to update you and let you know where we are, what we're thinking. So I have, if you guys. Go ahead.
The only thing I wanted to say, I think the county itself, and especially the departments at Crossroads, they utilize a lot of the things currently owned by the county, but as the program expands, it's starting to become a little tight for them there. And I think there is a lot more avenues that they could do. The more money that they can bring in, some of the items Justin talked about can bring revenue in as they're collected, because there's a commodity to them, you can sell them. So it helps offset some of the cost. I think as the program builds, you can also make it more user convenient for all hours out there. I think right now, when you're limited just to the recycling, I think it becomes an issue where you're set where you're at due to the fact that you're going to expand your hours. It's not going to be covered here. The more things you bring in, the more money that it covers. I think a new site too will make it more, it'll be user friendly. I think as far as like the location of it, it's closer to Trindle Road. I think you're keeping the traffic on a road that's meant to have traffic. And I think also the more that people get to use it, the more they're going to become familiar with the services that the county has, and word of mouth is paramount for getting the word out as far as, what services they do provide. I think you'll see a growth in what they end up collecting. So I think, the county is the fastest growing in the state. We look at some of the neighboring counties and you see their programs a little farther ahead. Their population growth has already been there. Lancaster's one of which that I think is like a model for the state, but they have the growth there with the city, and their county's grown as well. I think we have to stay a little bit ahead of the curve as a authority and as a county to try to keep pace with what the needs are of the residents. I think the only way would be to have a facility that would meet their demands for now, but also in the future. So.
Stacy, what's the amount reserved from ARP?
Oh, I believe it's 1.5 million. I believe. I would have to check our spreadsheet to be sure.
And I'll add one more thing, and I think Gary and Vince, you were both on, whenever the county decided to do sort of the fee-based electronics, I know there was people, they weren't sure, how the people would see that. When I went door to door, when I ran the next term, that had been in place, I think, like maybe a year, or it just started. That was one of the biggest things I heard out of the population is they were grateful for. It wasn't so much the township at that point. A lot of people, like open arms, have a respect for the fact that the recycling needs were being met. And I think that there's a bigger demand out there than what you actually hear on the level. I think it's more, under the radar.
I'd say too, it seems as if, tell me if I'm wrong on this, Kirk, but it seems like the number of comments that we get that are negative about the fee, is that dissipating?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we have our customer satisfaction surveys that we do, and they consistently come back high that our staff are doing a wonderful job. They're typically at 100%. We ask them if the fee is reasonable. Our customers are saying the fee is reasonable. That's typically what, John, the high 90% that the fee is reasonable. So I think, education is part of this too. That we do receive questions, whether it be in our household hazardous waste events or recycling, that our staff all answer the same way, that there's a cost to doing this recycling, and the cost is being absorbed by the fee. It's not being incorporated into the real estate tax that the county charges, so that it's the fees for the service is really supported. And it's not something that's being supported by every taxpayer who may or may not be using the service.
Kurt, I think you probably can confirm that our office gets a lot of calls.
Yeah, the call volume.
I'm out of the office a lot, and Jess handles that burden, but it's pretty significant.
If you looked at the call volume of our office, I would say probably 70% of the calls coming in to planning, recycling waste, and vector control waste measure are Justin's calls. Conveniently, he's out of the office. They are his calls.
Now, we own that 10 acres that
Yes.
you're looking at? Okay, well, that's big.
One thing, our township's currently looking at building a maintenance building. And I think Vince was on our board when we struggled to find ground that we could buy
Right.
that meant that people could sell at appraised value and weren't getting kind of shortchanged. We ended up finding real estate. The timing was kind of not on the best side because the architect said with the inflationary costs that we had due to the inflation that the country's going through there with the pandemic, that we could have built the same building prior, probably for about 40% less. So I don't know, like, every day we wait, we don't know what the future holds, but if we run into another inflationary period, we fall farther behind, and our township's dealing with that right now, that now we have some significant costs that we wouldn't have incurred if we would have been a few years earlier. So, I mean, it's a tough decision. I've been there, and I'm not saying it's easy, but, I look at what they do, and I think we're blessed as a county for the employees that they have running this, because I think they do offer a lot for what they have to work with. So, I think it would be beneficial to go to the next step.
Barb, well, if you recall, when we did our plan revision, one of our recommendations was that municipalities appoint a recycling coordinator and take the role seriously. And Barb is doing that in Low Round, and I commend her. She's going through the Professional Recyclers of Pennsylvania certification program. You handle the waste and recycling calls at the township.
Yes.
Do you have any comments on what questions you get and just the importance of recycling from a township perspective?
Well, number one, my residents appreciate the fact that they have the ability to take anything that they're recycling or their household hazardous waste to the county, knowing that that is an option for them. I have residents that call every day asking where to take things. And so that's important to every resident. I also live in Mechanicsburg Borough, so I talk to residents all the time in the borough and direct them into the county. But having seen the HRG study that came out, my first comment to Justin was, do you feel safe in that barn? So I think the safety of your of the staff members was my concern more than the recycling part, because I knew we were going to continue the recycling in some way. Knowing that there's an option or possibly an option to expand that, there's, paper shredding is what we have kind of slotted next. I think it's difficult to find a place to put the baler in the barn. So we would have to figure out where are we gonna put that in. If we wanted to do anything else more than just the paper shredding, we would need a larger location, and that's just gonna help the residents.
If we move to this new site, any ideas what we do with the existing site? It's okay to say no.
No, we have talked that,
By the way, you're gonna put money into it.
if we did something existing, say we take care of the barn issue. If we don't, that's still out there.
Right.
And I don't know that we, discussed.
Yes.
The other part of the existing site too, Vince, west of the barn, there's a series of buildings that vector control weights and measures facilities use. We've talked to those departments about potentially co-locating at this site. So that the one slide mentioned multi-departmental use of the site. That's what that would be. So you take those old buildings, which also are in bad shape, move them over there. So there's opportunities for other departments to take advantage of the investment we make here.
I think those buildings are probably in worse shape. Yeah. Than the barn.
And the climate control is really important for the paper shredding. Justin did a study countywide that he shared with our management team. It's basically looking at the benefits we could have of having the county have a centralized paper recycling opportunity. But if we're going to do that, we need to have a building that's climate controlled, where we can put the equipment and also overhead clearances, which we could potentially put in an environment that's really tight. We have regular video of groundhogs walking through our barn and stuff. So we don't want groundhogs chewing on our power supplies and stuff like that for a very expensive piece of equipment, which we have a grant for, and which we're looking at buying the equipment and having it ready to go. But again, we want to take this step by step as we look at the options we have and make sure that this facility is in place, ready to go before we really pull the trigger on the paper shredding.
Other thing, the investment, like Kirk said, in the paper shredder, putting in an old building, if the barn for any godforsaken reason would collapse, I think ensuring that in that building and the potential for a fire. Also, you've seen all the posts supporting the beams. It makes it tough for the personnel that work in there with the forklift. They have to be cognizant of where they are. You hit one of them and that's all it would take. I think there's a lot of impediments to using that, as it was designed for livestock, not what we're trying to use.
Some of these pictures, Dave, remind me of Houston Mill when we opened that thing up.
Would a new facility facilitate more recycling? Like, I think about, being there for recycling events when it's sweltering hot. It seems that we could do more in a climate controlled environment that would be comfortable not only for employees, but also for county residents.
I think the answer to that is for sure. And I'm thinking about that driving over too. I think we could offer the service more frequently as well and bring in more. I think we're missing some material because we're not open every day.
Yeah, exactly.
When you look to Gene at our existing site, when we're doing like our big events, household hazardous waste, one of the issues we find that folks have to leave their cars and come up to the trailer. And the trailer has steps.
Yep.
So we offer assistance for our customers that have mobility impairments, but to be able to design a site from scratch to make sure that it's designed with the customer in mind of how we best serve our customers, be a huge increase over what we have now. Put on top of that, the ability to do different types of recycling. I think we get a win-win out of the whole situation.
I do too.
Dave, you mentioned particularly about other materials and such, so that raises the question, is the facility as it's designed, would we be able to customize that, reconfigure it as the material throughput changes?
I would think so, but I think Justin Kirk No.
Yeah, I think you basically just need an enclosed, climate controlled, wide open area. And I think the benefit of that too is for whatever reason, recycling fades away in the future. You have a facility that can be a benefit to another department
Okay,
or the county as a whole.
so it's highly flexible.
It's very flexible.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Because as you mentioned, it's commodity, so we've already seen the last couple of years, some things there's demand, then there's no demand, other things seems demand.
Yeah, I think if it does subside, I know certain materials that I deal with, like, you'll see scrap metal, all that, there's price, it's like a roller coaster, there's ups and downs in it, but there's always a value to it. Sometimes it's real profitable, sometimes it's not. And one thing I spoke at the meeting was about going through Bay, like when we offer these drive-through events, if we have inclement weather, this is also for the benefit of the employee. They're not out in bad weather handling, like Lord knows what, certain materials are not to be commingled with water. They can pull through there, being a dry area, unload, and I think it can be expedited, their whole operation when they're doing things.
That location, what we always heard before from others regarding Army Heritage Drive is difficulty in getting there from the western part. That's, I guess, if you're coming 81, there's a lot of roads there. Do we envision any difficulty for municipalities or anybody who might want to use that complaining that it's less accessible?
I think it's more accessible. Location where it would be able to accommodate more on-site traffic, safer on-site traffic. And also, we look ahead, exit 49 is likely going to be made a full interchange, part of the I-81 master plan. So when that happens, then we have full access interchanges almost within sight of our facility.
For the entirety of the county, it's more accessible, the new site than the old site.
That comes out to traffic signal too, to get to Trendle, so I think that is a bonus.
Any concerns that I hate to say, but dumping? Is that location any better?
I don't think, no. I mean, that's always a concern, no matter where you're at. I don't think that location versus another location increase or decrease the opportunity.
Okay. Any other questions? The point before us is whether we want to take a motion, take action on proceeding with this, or do we want to sleep on it for a while, or what's the wishes of the board?
Can I ask you a question? Justin, you probably mentioned it, I'm sorry. To renovate the existing site would cost how much?
A little over 1.8 million. There's 1,250,000, something like that.
Right, and a new facility at the proposed new site would be how much?
Well, we don't know.
Don't know.
That's part of what we would determine in next steps.
And how much would that cost Kirk to get?
I'm not sure, yeah.
Okay.
So the next step would be, an RFP for engineering design services. So we bring a firm on, work with, our staff and with the authority to really lay out what we're looking for and get us some cost estimates back. So we want to take this step by step, so we don't dive into this head first and find out, well, this is a lot more than we can afford or isn't exactly what we need. That initial engineering designer effort, Vince, I wouldn't expect would be a lot of money, but I think it's money well spent to help us
To help us make a decision.
Right.
Long term, okay.
Questions on the engineering RFP?
No, I have not.
Do we want to make a motion today?
I'll move to approve to proceed with the engineering and design for a new recycling facility located on Army Heritage Drive.
I will second.
Okay, it's moved and seconded, and if there's no further questions, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good work on this. All right, we're done with you, I guess, unless you had something additional. Okay, that moves us to item 5, other business. Thanks for coming in today. I really
Thank you,
appreciate the
guys.
board members being
See
here.
you.
If there's nothing else, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.